Hi there, welcome back to the Flask Mastery series. In this session, we are going to implement our endpoint that retrieves a single user by their ID. So let's jump right in. So within our user controller, we are going to go ahead and create a function that is going to enable us to retrieve the details of a single user by their ID. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this and paste it here, and then I'm going to update the URL. So the URL is going to be /user/. So for this endpoint, we are going to work with the route parameter, which is the ID of the user, and this must be defined within the URL. So the syntax is that we first define the type of the route parameter, and for this case our ID was defined as an integer, so this is going to be type int, and then we proceed it with the name of the route parameter, and the name of the route parameter that we are using is the ID. So this is the syntax that we always use. And also I'm going to ensure that we are protecting this route. So the fact that we are working with the route parameter, that means that we need to pass in the param within the function as a parameter itself. So our function is going to be get user, and it takes in ID as the parameter, and this ID is going to come from the request. So now we are going to go ahead and create a variable that is going to store a user that we shall be retrieving from the database with their ID. So this is going to be user, and the filter by function is going to take in the user ID, and this must be the ID that is coming from the request. Instead of all, we are going to update this to first, such that we get the first row for the ID, and we do not need the user data list. So I'm going to go ahead and delete all these and update the indentation. So for such an endpoint, we know that we are working with two categories of users. We have the authors and we also have the administrators. So that means that if we are to pass in an ID of a user type that is an author, we have to ensure that we are returning the companies and the books for that author or for that user. And for these other user types like the admin, that means that the companies and the books must be null. So that means that we have to therefore go ahead and create a books variable that is going to be initially null or empty, and same applies to the company variable. So this is going to be companies, and initially it's going to be null. So we are going to go ahead and I think we need line 123. So we check if this user has the books, then instead of us returning this, we must ensure that we are returning the variable that we have defined initially. So this is going to be books, such that we return the books for that user in case they had some, and this is going to be updated to user. So we can also check if our user object has the companies, and if they do exist, return the companies list alongside the data for all the companies. So this is going to be user.companies, and then in the response we want to return user details retrieved successfully, and then we do not need the total. So what we need is the user object, so this is going to be user, and then we return an object for the user data. So I think we can make use of this object that was defined for our first endpoint. So I'll paste it here. Then we can also see that we have to pass in the biography for cases whereby we are working with the authors. So I'm going to copy this, and after the type I will add the biography, and instead of author this is going to be user.biography. Not forgetting that for the authors type we need the companies, and the value is going to be accessed, and same applies to the books. So having defined this, we are going to go ahead and test our application. So within our users folder, I'm going to go ahead and create a new request, and then the name for the request is going to be get user by ID. Then the URL for this request is going to be user/the ID. So whenever we are trying to test such routes that require route parameters, we have to pass in the exact value of the ID. So we can start testing with user ID 3, and then we make a new request. So we also need to pass in the authorization headers. So update this to bearer token and then make a new request. So the token has expired. Let's try to use one here. I'm going to copy this first token and paste it here. So when I make a new request for user ID 3, we get the user details. We have the user object that has the biography, and as of now, this user has no books. And we have the companies, the contact, created at, the email address, the first name, the ID, the last name, the type, and the username. So let me also make a request for user ID 7. So when I make a new request for this user, we can see that this is the system admin, and then we have the type as admin. Then we also have these other details. So when I make another request for a new user, we can see that this is still the administrator. I hope you found this session insightful. Thanks for watching, and see you again in the next session.